We've seen shares in Fortress Paper, which have been under some pretty severe pressure, shooting up in value over the past few sessions. Now, the company says dissolving pulp production at its Thurso mill in Quebec, they're still ramping up that facility, has averaged more than 90% of targeted capacity over the past few days. They're still ramping up to full capacity. They say the pulp from that facility is meeting customer specifications, and they say shipments to China are increasing. And then, of course, late last week, they announced that a significant banknote contract was reinstated. So joining us to talk about this string of good news and give us his outlook on the company, Fortress Paper CEO Chad Wasilenko. Thanks for joining us again, Chad.
Thanks for having me on.
So why are investors so pleased about Thurso? I mean, you're ramping up this facility. You have had some technical problems. Is the market convinced, do you think, that you put these difficulties behind you?
Yeah, over the last 6 months or so, we faced a lot of pressure as a company to get the Thurso mill ramped up. There were some expectations out there, and we weren't meeting them. Again, nothing was really wrong. We were just a little bit slower than we would have liked, and the investors would have liked. So the news release that came out yesterday basically vindicated that we're well over 90%. We've had several days where we've actually operated in a row at well over our 100% targeted capacity. So we know the mill can run. Now we just have to improve the reliability. And again, this news release demonstrates that it's direction.
And tell us, you have two mills then. You have Lebel-sur-Quévillon. What's that one about, please?
So that's a mill we announced about 3 months ago, the transaction. It is not closed yet, but we have every expectation that it will close in the near future. That is a mill in northern Quebec. It was previously owned by Domtar. It's been idle for the last 6 or 6.5 years. Our intention there is to do similar to what we did at Thurso, go through a major conversion. It'll take approximately 2 years, several hundreds of millions of dollars to get through that conversion, but take it from a commodity paper producing type of pulp mill into the specialized dissolving pulp mill, similar as we've done to Thurso. It as well will be a low quartile cost producer. So again, just adding to our overall global presence in that space, which we feel very confident about going forward.
Of course, dissolving pulp used to make rayon, which is a textile in big demand in China, although we're hearing that rayon prices have been, or pulp prices have been under pressure lately.
Yeah, more on the commodity side. When we look at dissolving pulp, it used to have a very tight correlation to cotton. And over the last month or so, cotton prices have been declining, but the underlying dissolving pulp prices remain very, very stable. The reasoning behind that, we feel confident, is that there's enough pulp required out of China, which are very high-cost producers, typically in the $1,150 to maybe $1,300 range. So when dissolving pulp price, which is around $1,100 currently, it just can't drop much lower. Otherwise, all this Chinese capacity comes offline and sits idle, and then there's just not enough dissolving pulp in the world to meet the demand. So it does set a nice floor in the pricing going forward.
Of course, dissolving pulp, the street sees this as your big business. I'm just looking at an estimate from Raymond James. They reckon it's worth, the two mills, worth about $24 a share, whereas your security paper for banknotes business, and your wallpaper business worth about 16. So it's mostly about dissolving pulp with you.
Yes, we've definitely transformed the company. We started as a paper producer with our two European assets. But since the acquisition of Thurso, it's now become the main driving force in the company. And assuming we close on the second mill in short order at Lebel-sur-Quévillon, then it really does become more of a Canadian dissolving pulp producer with some ancillary European assets.
Now, you also said Friday that you've had a big banknote order renewed. Apparently, it's a pretty significant banknote order. You can't tell us about the customer. It had been postponed since the fourth quarter of 2011. We're looking at some facts about your company. Of course, you're the exclusive supplier for Swiss francs. Plenty of demand for those these days. Can you give us any color, though, on this banknote order, how important it is?
Yeah, if we look at that mill in general, when we bought it back in 2006, it was only doing approximately 900 tons of banknotes per year. We've completely rebuilt the facility in both machines. We now have annual capacity of approximately 10,000 tons. This particular order represents over 5,000 tons, or half a year's capacity. We had it in place, and at the end of last year, a week before we were starting to produce it, the contract got put on hold.
Ouch.
With the banknote industry, it makes it very, very tough. It's not a commodity type of product where you can just continue to make your regular product and sell it to or find another customer. It's a long sales cycle, so we had to then go out and find new orders to replace this void in production, or this temporary void in production. But by the time you get certified, qualified, they have to test your watermarks, then you go through a tender process. Then even if you win and are awarded the tender, then you have to go and procure all the raw materials, such as the threads and foils. Each are specific to each banknote for each country. So again, that takes about 6 months. So during the first 2 quarters of this year, we faced very significant losses at our Swiss mill. So this reinstatement that we announced last Friday is very important. It now gives us the production capacity we've been looking for the remainder of the year. So both analysts and shareholders were very concerned that there was going to be continued bleeding that mill. But again, now with this order being reinstated, the mill should be turning around here in short order.
And let's turn to wallpaper, because you have this new type of wallpaper, a lot easier to put up and take down. Last year you said we're thinking about strengthening that wallpaper business and then we might divest it. Any changes in your plans there?
No, not really. That mill is running exceptionally well, record month after record month. Margins are expanding. We're increasing pricing. There's just more and more demand for that particular product, and there's not enough capacity in the world. So we are considering trying to find alternate ways to participate in that and get more capacity. But again, our strategy with all of our different projects and all of our different mills is to be a low-cost, globally competitive producer. So to do that, we would have to build a fairly large facility or put a second line at our Dresden mill. That would be approximately 50,000 additional tons, and that could take 2 to 3 years to fill. In the meantime, obviously, would temporarily have overcapacity in the market and hurt our pricing pressure and the benefits we're experiencing now. So we're weighing both those options, and ultimately we will probably divest of that business. We view all our companies as part of our portfolio. We look to buy, obviously, ideal at the low end of the cycle, and once the business is fully matured and the growth profile is slowing down, and or we feel we could utilize the capital from selling an asset and deploy it into a new business or a different division with better returns, we'd look to do that. So there is no plan to sell it in the immediate future, but it is always an option for us.
Can you tell us, have you been printing up currency for the Greeks or any other nations that might leave the euro?
Unfortunately, I'm not at liberty to discuss it, but it's very interesting times, and we do get a unique look at what's going on behind the scenes, and stay tuned.
Can you tell us anything? I mean, what's going on in the industry, or are any nations printing up currencies to your knowledge?
Again, unfortunately, we're not really at liberty to say, but it's volatile times. National banks are generally very, very conservative. Any indications of uncertainty, they will always have backup plans and redundancies in place. So, unfortunately, I should leave it at that.
Chad, we'd better go. It's always great talking to you, and I know you've got a lot of happier shareholders over the past couple of days.
Yes. Thanks for having me on.
Chad Wasilenkov is CEO of Fortress Paper.